All right. Welcome, everybody. I am here with Colleen.
Oh, that's me. Hi.
And we're excited today because we are here with Catherine C. Bastedo.
Hello.
Hello. Glad to have you here. Just a few announcements that we have at Reiki Lifestyle. Colleen has a Karuna class coming up, and that is, let me make sure I have the dates right, February 23rd through 25th. And then her and myself and Sue Strong will be teaching Animal Reiki 1 and 2, Animal Reiki Master, in March 2nd, 3rd, and then the master class is the 4th through the 6th. So I think, and of course we have other Reiki classes, all the way through the year. So you can go and check that out always at reikilifestyle.com. All right, Colleen, I got everything right?
I think so. Yep.
So what we'll do is we will go ahead and introduce our guest. We were so happy to meet her and really excited about our topic today. She is the author and creator of, among other things, lots of other things, and we'll be talking about Reiki and all of that today too, of the Bird Vibes meditation deck. So we are really excited to talk about that. Colleen and I are both lovers of birds, something that not everybody would know about us. And also, both of us have had some really life-changing, life-altering, really, really strong, beautiful guidance and experiences with birds. So that is another part of it and a part of our work. And we are actually always kind of listening to the birds in a lot of different ways for the actual literal idea of that, but then also kind of from that guidance perspective as well. So we're really excited to have you here, Catherine, and talk about all of it.
I'm very excited to be here.
Yes. All
Thank
right.
you for having me.
Yeah, of course. We're so excited. All right. Catherine C. Bastedo has taught Reiki at all levels, led workshops and retreats, volunteered as a wellness coach for cancer survivors, and sat on the board of a nonprofit organization devoted to women's health. She practices yoga, meditation, and writes online articles related to complementary health. She spent her childhood in northwestern Ontario, obtained her master's in Canadian studies, and now lives in Gatineau, Quebec. She enjoyed a career at a senior level with the Canadian government and then was executive director of an international nonprofit that promoted and supported Canadian studies before turning to her writing and energy work. She loves spending time with family, being outdoors, and traveling, and is always curious to learn about the flora and fauna of other countries, especially the birds. So you can find Catherine at CatherineCBastedo.com, and Bastedo is Bastedo. Of course, as always, we'll have this in the description, the show notes, so you can find it there. Her Facebook is Vision Reiki. Her LinkedIn is Catherine-C-Bastedo. Oh, and then it's got some numbers on the, so rather than saying that, just go to our description to find her LinkedIn. And then her Instagram is Catherine C. Bastedo. So yes.
And Catherine is with a C.
Yes, thank you. Catherine C. Bastedo is with a C. Again, you can find it. We'll have the full links in our descriptions and show notes. So, all right. Well, welcome, Catherine. We're excited to have you here. We always just like to start with how you came into this work, because it sounds like you kind of had an academic career before this. And so I'm just really interested to see how you came to energy work, Reiki, complementary health.
Well, a lot of things came together in my life, and I think they took a while to come together, but I'll mention the various influences that led me to this. And part of it was my childhood. I think growing up in, as you mentioned, in northwestern Ontario, really in quite an isolated area north of Lake Superior, a small pulp and paper town right in the bush. And so being very, very close to nature all the time, close enough that you couldn't walk across the tracks or you get lost kind of thing in the bush. So nature was a big part of my childhood, and even after we moved to the big city of Toronto, it was still a part of me. And so that was one influence. And then, as you mentioned, I had a career in the federal government, and oddly enough, that was an influence as well because it was a very stressful career as a manager and executive working in the government, and I seemed to have a series of very difficult bosses, and I don't know why. I still have a bit of trouble understanding why that came about, but I know there were lessons in that. And in a way, it led me to Reiki because I was in a very difficult work situation in one place, and three people mentioned Reiki to me in one day, in 1 week, I should say, rather in 1 week, and I'd never heard of it before. And I thought, well, there must be something in this. And I was ready for anything that would help me because people were coming into my office in tears and pouring out their troubles, and I didn't know how to not take it on. So I took my first Reiki class, really just for myself and my family. And then what happened was that a young colleague died very suddenly, and I realized life is fragile. And I said to myself, what should I do? I asked Spirit, what should I do? And the answer came loud and clear, boom, more Reiki. So, okay, well, I looked around and I found a teacher, another teacher. I felt I needed to try a new teacher. And I found Julie Desmarais in Ottawa, who teaches holographic Reiki. And this I found very interesting because it was very much tied into nature, and it also tied into my literature background because it was a lot about the symbols of nature and the guidance that nature can give us. And these influences came together, and I just became very, very interested in energy healing and many aspects of energy healing, and found that Reiki was what I really loved the most after trying various things. And then there's another story of what led to my bird vibes deck. Should I go into that now, or do you want to?
Yeah.
All right. So as I was doing my Reiki classes, and at the time that I decided I wanted to find a new Reiki teacher, just because I felt that I needed to grow with a different type of Reiki. The first two classes had been traditional Reiki, and this was at my level 3. And I thought I wanted to see what another teacher has to teach me. And so I went, at the time I was working for the Treasury Board of Canada, so very formal atmosphere. I'd walk in wearing my suit and my high heels and looking very governmentese. And I walked into an office with angels all over the walls, which I was not very familiar with. And I thought, what am I doing here? And I came to her office, and she looked up at me. I'd never met her before. And she said, Catherine, there's a hawk on your shoulder and it has a broken wing. And I thought, oh my goodness, where am I? And she was probably thinking the same thing, because I don't suppose I looked as if I fit in her environment either. And it turned out, she said, hawks are the messengers and you have messages to deliver. And things kind of went from there. And another part of the story was that I was in Hope, British Columbia, a small town where my sister lives. And at the time I had been dabbling in tarot. I'd taken courses in tarot, and I'd really been searching for what I wanted to do. And I knew there was energy there that I didn't quite understand around me. So I'd taken tarot classes, and I was visiting in Hope, and there was another friend, and they said, would you like to give a tarot reading? And only there were no tarot cards. So we went out to a small store, the pharmacy, probably in Hope, and I bought a deck of cards, playing cards that had birds on one side, different pictures of birds. And I brought these back, and I looked at them and I thought, wow, I could do something way more interesting than a deck of playing cards with birds on the back. And so I wrote to the company that had produced them in Vancouver, and they didn't even answer me. And I thought, well, that's fine. I'm just meant to do my own thing. And I started thinking about producing a deck of cards related to birds that would have spiritual meaning for people. And that was really the various ways that the very first copy of Bird Vibes came together.
Interesting. So then with that, How long was that process, first of all? Like, where was the kind of, is this years, or is it just like kind of came tumbling out of you? Would be my first question.
The process to write was over a few months to write the messages on the cards. They have since been refined, but the basic, and they've been made extremely accurate from an ornithological point of view in the deck that I've just produced, because it's been reviewed by an ornithologist. And I realized from my first deck that there were some mistakes, and there were some refinements to be made, and I needed to be more accurate. But the basic spiritual message has not changed. And that was a period of a few months. And sometimes some of the cards came out right away. It was just it was there. Mind you, I had to check all my bird facts, but the spiritual side came out right away. Some of them was a bit more of a process, and then I would ask for guidance. I would ask spirit, or I would say, I'm stuck. What do I do? What bird do I put in here? And some of the choices of the birds were very clear to me, and others were not so much. But I did have a criterion for myself that I would have seen all the birds that are in the deck, and that I would have had some kind of of an experience with these birds. So it wouldn't just be a robin on the front lawn. It would mean something a little bit more deeper than that. So all of the birds in the deck I've seen, certainly, sometimes not often. A lot of the birds are fairly common. They're mainly Central and Eastern North American birds, but of course it could be seen in Western North America, many of them as well, or another variety, and or subspecies. And that's how many of them came about. And a few were more unusual occurrences, where I saw a snowy owl or a golden eagle, or a bird deep in the woods, which wouldn't be your common backyard bird.
Can you like hold up a card and then give us kind of an example of what is included on each card? Or,
Sure.
maybe not on each card, but as a part of what's in maybe the accompanying book that comes with them, or.
Yes, that's a good idea. I should say, first of all, that the cards are divided by chakras, and I think that's what makes this deck particularly interesting, and that's the feedback that I've had, and it was so from the beginning. So that there are 50 cards in the deck. There are 7 cards for each of the first 7 chakras, and 1 card for the 8th chakra, the soul star, and that's a snowy owl. And these cards are color coded, so it's easy to see where the bird fits in the chakra. And you'll see that when I show you. And there are also 4 cards for the seasons. So it makes a 54 card deck. And you can use the seasonal cards along with the bird cards. So this morning, when I knew I would be talking to you this afternoon, I was looking at my bird feeder and very aware of it's a very cold here. I'm speaking to you, as you mentioned, from Gatineau, Quebec, on a very cold day. Well, it's about 0 degrees Celsius, and quite nippy. And but there were birds at the feeder this morning. And so I picked out the birds that I saw at the feeder. So one of them, this is the house finch, very pretty bird, common at feeders. And this is how the birds are shown in the deck. So each card has a painting of a bird that has been that is an original oil painting by an Ottawa artist by name of Heather Bale. And the paintings are about the same size, so they're miniatures of birds. They're very fine paintings. And on the other side of the deck, you'll see the red here, and the red is showing that this house finch is in the first chakra, the first chakra being associated with the color red. And I'll read this as an example. It has a message: connect with nature. And then it says first chakra. And then there's always a line about the bird. The warble of the friendly house finch is heard in cities, towns, and agricultural areas. Stop and notice the birds wherever you may be. Listen to their voices and experience the soothing energy of nature. So each card starts with a fact about the bird, and then it goes into a message. And I call these meditation cards because it goes into a meditational message. And the person reading the card can think about, how do I apply that in my life, in my day? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to me that this card is in the first chakra? So that was one of the birds. And then there were chickadees that were flitting all around, and you'll see the green there. So that's the heart chakra. And the paintings I commissioned to reflect the words that I had already written. So the word of the card is celebrate, and you see this chickadee, it just really, to me, looks as if it's celebrating with its wings up like that. And the last line of it, the spiritual line, is a light now to celebrate all aspects of life. Come close to friends and loved ones to share your joys and your sorrows. And the chickadees are in the heart chakra to me because most people that I know who know chickadees think of them as a lovely, friendly bird that likes to be with other people, that will come and light on your hand. So it seemed that was a very natural one for the heart chakra. And then I had a cardinal, and a northern cardinal. It says seek the truth, and this cardinal is each card is a number, so it's 42. You can see the indigo for the chakra, the sixth chakra. And this was based on how cardinals eat the seeds. And the last line is crack the nut and seek the kernel of truth in your heart. So the person meditating on this card would think about that line and might also think about when they'd seen cardinals. Cardinals are a bird that sometimes people have told me they see after a loved one has passed away. They're not unfamiliar birds, and the red is significant and the crest is significant. They say that birds with crests are connecting us particularly with spirit. So those were some of the cards that I picked for this morning because they had shown up in the wintertime. You mentioned the book. Shall I talk about that?
Yeah, because I was going to say, one of the things, I think another question is that they're a meditation deck. And so also along with the book, like how would one, you kind of talked about it, but like how would one use them as a meditation deck? Are they asking their questions and then reflecting on, within their answers, or the other way around? Do they pull a card and then ask questions around that in their meditation? So yeah, the book and then how you would use them is great.
The book is all new. It was not in my first deck when I published it. Okay. And when Beyond Words approached me and asked me if I would like to see my cards, the Bird Vibes, mass produced, I leapt at the opportunity, and that meant doing a guidebook. So this guidebook I wrote over the last year with some wonderful assistance from Beyond Words Publishing, and it's a beautiful little book. The cover is taken from one of the cards for the seasons. This is the fall card, and each card for the season has a tiny bird in it. You have to look to find it, but there's a thrush in that card. Now, in the book, as I mentioned, they were reviewed by an ornithologist for me, and so it's also has an aim of familiarizing people with birds and wanting them to go out and learn more about birds, and it has that environmental aspect to it. The card has some beautiful illustrations. There's a chakra chart, for example, with all of the attributes of the birds for each chakra, so that as many of your listeners may know, each chakra has certain attributes. Well, the birds have attributes as well. So I've married the attributes of the chakras and the birds. And so, for example, you could look at the third chakra and read that it's all about intuition. At the third eye, the intuition and imagination, awareness, clarity, perception. And then you would see the birds that are associated with the third eye, the great horned owl, the belted kingfisher, the killdeer, the hawks, the cardinal. Now, as far as using the cards, there's a section on how to use the cards, and these involve different types of meditations, which I've suggested. And one of them, for example, is a walking meditation. I love to walk myself, so I love to get out in nature. I'm fortunate to live near the woods, and so it's easy for me to go for a walk in the woods. But you don't have to walk in the woods. You can walk on a city street or in a park or anywhere. The important thing is to really be mindful as you're walking. And I've suggested that people can either choose a card ahead of time, they can carry it with them, or they can choose the card when they come back after a good meditative walk, and that card will bring them additional messages associated with their walk and with what they're meditating upon at the time. Another use would be, and many of my clients have told me this, that they like to choose a card when they wake up in the morning or just before they go to bed at night. And even some people have their kids choose a card before they go to school, because the messages are all positive. They're messages that lead one to reflect, but also to feel good, to help connect with the higher self. Then there's an 8 chakra meditation with a beautiful illustration. And I give examples of how you could pick a card for each chakra and what that might mean. And using the 50 cards in sequence. Some people have told me they like to pick one card in order. Sometimes we pick a card intuitively out of a deck that we've shuffled. But some people also just like to read it like a book, one card at a time before bed. So there's many ways, or in the morning, there's many ways to use the deck, and the examples are there. And then the deck reproduces in color, beautiful color, all of the cards. And it has a list of the birds and the scientific names for the birds of the species. It has sources for birders. It has sources for Reiki. It is quite complete. It has sources for meditation as well. So I think it's a very handy little guidebook. I hope it will be very, very useful for people.
Well, I love even the idea of the messages from the birds. And so when you were talking about your process taking several months, which to me seems quickly, that's amazing. So kind of share your process with receiving those messages. And, I'm sure that Reiki was a part of that. And just how did you sit down to receive the messages from each bird, that spiritual part of the connection?
I asked for guidance, as we do when we're seeking spiritual help. I connected with my mother, who has passed over, who was an amateur naturalist. In fact, my book is dedicated to her. And she was also very intuitive. Not so widely recognized I think in her generation, but I know she was very intuitive. It showed up in her life and with us, and she was very connected to the birds. So sometimes I did say, Mother, I need help here. And I would receive the help. And one of the cards, it's not mentioned, but this card of the Veery, I wrote with my mother in my mind because it was her favorite card. There's a poem by Henry Van Dyke, an early American naturalist, called The Veery, and it was one of her favorite poems. And I'll tell you how this card can connect with Reiki as well, because the card says, hope all things. And it's in the 5th chakra, and I'll read this one because you need to hear it to connect. The Veery's resonant descending flute song at dusk seems sweet and spiritual. Like the first star of the evening, the song is a sign of hope. Take heart. The night comes and heralds a new dawn. Now, this is not a common bird. I've only heard it a few times, and not so much in the last years. It's a thrush, and it really is a beautiful, beautiful song. And it does sing 4 or 5 or later, depending on the season, at the dusk. And a friend of mine was going through treatments for breast cancer, and she had this deck, and so she chose this card, the Veery, and she put it beside her computer, and she left it there all the time that she was going through her breast cancer treatments. And she found it was a great comfort to her, this reminder that the night comes and heralds a new dawn, and that there's always a new day. So the message was helpful for her. She did recover, and the cards I've used in Reiki ever since the very first edition, and with the terrible sealing of the cards that peeled off, and it was really bad, technically speaking, the first one. But the messages were there, the base of the messages, and from the very first time, I use them in Reiki classes. So if there was a Reiki share, always I was holding many Reiki shares before COVID, and I haven't picked up physical Reiki shares yet. But in all my Reiki shares, we would choose a card before starting, and we would stand in a circle. And after we done all the openings that we do at a Reiki share, then we would pick a card, and each person would read sometimes the whole card if they were drawn to, or sometimes just the spiritual message. And if they felt like it, then they would explain why they were sure this card was meant for them and what it meant to them. And these have been very moving for me to hear people's reactions to the cards. And I have also always used the cards before my Reiki sessions. I find that it helps people relax a little bit to think about a bird. It helps people connect with what they want to, their intention for the Reiki session, because the message in the card may lead them to understand their intention. And sometimes at the end of a session, I'll say, would you like to choose a card for a parting message? And so a different bird will come to them. And I've used them in retreats and brought them to other people's retreats. And the cards have flown all over the world, actually. Even the earlier small edition went to many different countries. During COVID, I was teaching an online class called Healing Your Chakras through the Wise Woman University with Susan Weed. And I said to them, would it be all right if we offered this class free during COVID? People need help. And they said, oh, well, we haven't done that before, but sure, if you want to offer it free, that's fine. So we offered the Healing Your Chakras free, and I was stunned at the response. It was huge. And I said, for people who contact me, I will draw a card for you. And so I was drawing cards for people in England and Australia and the Caribbean. It was really quite fun, and gave me some wonderful things to think about during COVID when we didn't have those in-person contacts.
How do you get the cards, Catherine? That was something that we haven't asked. Is it just on your website, or can you get them on?
Oh, they're at all major bookstores now.
Okay.
You can get them at Barnes and Noble, at Amazon, and in Canada, and Indigo chapters. If you go to my website, you'll see all the stores where they're listed. And so I'm really not selling them individually myself now, because they are available at all major bookstores, and some of the independent bookstores are buying them. And I'm hoping that they will be available at nature stores as well. I'm not sure where we're at with that, because the cards only came out December 26th. This is still brand new.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes, they're brand new. And the other day I had an interview, and the interviewer said, oh my goodness, I love these cards. I'm taking them to the gardens nearby, be a large biological garden and botanical garden, a large botanical garden. And she said, I'm going to take these cards in and say, you have to buy these. And so I'm hoping that they will go to that sort of a place as well, nature museums and so on.
With the publishers in Portland calling, I was thinking, oh, I wonder if they're at Powell's and at New Wren. They're independent
I would imagine
stores, and New Wren is a independent spiritual shop here. So if Portland area, maybe we can check them out there. So.
Yes, they're certainly available on the website of Beyond Words Publishing.
Great.
So I would refer you there as well. But if anyone listening would like to Google Bird Vibes meditation cards, it will pop up all the places. And certainly you can go to my website, as mentioned, at catherinecbastedo.com, and you can see the stores there where you can buy them.
Awesome.
Well, as you're talking, Catherine, and you talk about I draw a card, what I actually hear is I draw a message.
Yes.
And
yes, exactly.
As you are pulling a card, it's the card is the physical, tangible part, but what you're really pulling is the message from the bird.
And yes, that's so true. That's very well put, Colleen. And I hadn't really thought of it in that those terms before, but you're absolutely right. I'm pulling a message, and it's not me giving the message, it's spirit working through me as a channel to give this message, and the person is receiving the message that's right for them at the time. And the bird is a symbol. And that was where my literature background came in, because I had always enjoyed working with symbolism and archetypes and metaphors. And Ted Andrews was a good influence as well. All his books on animal speak and animal wise and so on. I was very attuned to those, and the holographic Reiki. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, when I wrote my cards, I avoided opening his books because I didn't want to be influenced or anyone say, "Oh, it sounds like Ted Andrews." And there are a few times where it does, because an eagle is worldwide symbol of power from Roman times and onwards. So that's natural. But in other times, I avoided looking at it just because I wanted it to come through me intuitively. And then afterwards, I would look and say, "Oh, that's interesting. We're the same here or different." But yes, that's very much so that the birds are metaphors and symbols for what's going on in our life, and they lead us to reflect upon things in new ways. I think there's a very pretty one here. The rose-breasted grosbeak comes to my feeder once in a while, not very often, but when it does, I think, wow, that's a beautiful bird. And the male has this beautiful heart-shaped breast of red, and it says, "Reveal your heart." The brilliant red heart of the male rose-breasted grosbeak shows up clearly. Share your love with those close to you whenever you can. The opportunity may fly by and not come again. And that has motivated people, I think, to okay, well, I was a little bit afraid to do this or to help my neighbor or to say something, and maybe I should do that. Maybe I should do that now.
That is such a relevant message for today. And, our families. I just had my 95 and 91-year-old in-laws here for over a week because of the ice storms here in Portland, and, just having them here and safe. And I really had that feeling of that message that you just shared, that this was my time to get to spend that time with them in a loving way. And for them to feel comfortable and safe, and the power was out for 4 days at their place and all those things. So
yes,
yeah,
indeed.
so it's such a good reminder. That's a great message.
And sometimes it's about someone that we don't know at all. It might be about the homeless person on the street that we might have walked by, and that it's time to say hello. I remember walking by somebody in Toronto on a very, very busy street, and everybody rushing back and forth, and a man on the street was begging, and I looked at him and I said hello, and he said, "Thank you for seeing me," because everybody was rushing by. So sometimes I think we get that message, and we can give our Reiki and our energy and our love to people without actually having to give money or to do a Reiki session. We just need to acknowledge that people are there
and see them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Colleen, I thought of you because as I mentioned to you just before the show, I've been doing my update on world peace not too long ago. And there is one new bird in this deck. And this story hasn't come out on other interviews, but it seems to be meant to come out today. And when I did my first deck, I had written the text, and there was a message about a dove, and I had wanted to have a white dove because I was focused on the symbolism of a white dove. Well, it turns out there really isn't a white dove in North America, and the painter who I had asked to paint to represent the message painted some white doves. And when I went to Beyond Words, they very astutely said, "What is this bird?" And I thought, oh dear, that's an Australian bird where they do have white doves. And I thought I better replace that bird because I have said that these are North American birds. So what we have now is a mourning dove. And I went to the artist and I said, would you please paint a new dove for me? I let go. That was my ego saying I want a white dove, and there's no white dove except maybe you might see a white rock dove, a pigeon on the street, but no real white dove. So would you please paint me a mourning dove? And she did this beautiful painting of a mourning dove, and it says seek peace. So I thought, well, that's interesting. We're talking a lot about peace these days. We're wishing for peace. We're all concerned about world events. And here I have the card number 45 in the 7th chakra that says seek peace. The mourning dove is a common sight in open habitats south of the boreal forest. The male's soft, drawn-out cooing may sound mournful, yet comforting. Let yourself be soothed by music, meditation, or whatever most lightens your heart. And these are meditation cards also because they're not meant to tell somebody what to do right now or what the message is. The message is meant to come from within. So the person will reflect and say, what do I need to do to soothe my heart? What do I need to do to bring myself peace? Do I need to be easier on myself? Do I need to think differently? Do I need to let go of some old patterns, some old ways of thinking? Or do I need to go outside and try and bring peace that way? So this is not a deck to tell you what to do. It's a deck to help you connect with your higher self and your own spiritual wisdom. Say, what do I do to seek peace?
Well, and even just talking about the dove, I'm fortunate and have a family of doves that live in my backyard. And you're right, that sound always catches my attention. Their song, their sound, and catches my attention, and exactly that, where it brings that sense of comfort and peace. It does give me that image and I guess frequency, maybe. It comes in energetically that way. And I love the way this opens the idea of really listening to the messages of the birds. And, you know, they communicate so much with us if we are open and listening. And I know for myself, sometimes it catches my attention and then I'm back in my busyness, or then it catches my attention again. Or one of the things I love in my window, I have crows or ravens, probably crows, and a family again that has lived here forever. And just getting to watch them and their activity. For me, I always feel like the birds let us know what's going on in our environment. And, you know, what's happening. If I'm out in the woods, I'm listening to the birds because they will tell you what's happening in the woods. And whether I understand their language or not, I can tell what they're saying.
When I was developing my early version of the deck, and after my friend, teacher who became my close friend, had told me that the hawk was the messenger, I had some very odd experiences, and I kept finding dead birds around me. And they would come into my yard to die, or I would find a hawk dropped out of the sky onto my back deck. Just a big hawk. It just dropped. I came across a peregrine falcon on a small path in the city. I mean, there were very odd occurrences that were like, what is going on? I was actually starting to feel a little bit spooked by the whole thing. And I talked to my friend and she said, you have to do something. You've got to write your messages. And after I had written the bird vibes, it all stopped. No more dead birds at my feet showing up. No more broken winged birds coming into my yard. And so there are odd ways that the bird gives us messages. And I think it's good to point out also that we don't have to go outside and see the actual birds to get messages and to connect with them. We can see, have a calendar on our wall of beautiful pictures of birds. We can look at pictures. We can do so much online now with Audubon and Cornell, and the birding sites are just amazing these days, all that you can see, and cameras that go into watch birds' nests, and you can see eagle babies. It's very uplifting, I think, to see birds. And if you notice, person notices that they're really drawn to certain birds, and that could be meaningful too. And when that happens, then you can pick up the deck and say, well, what does that mean that this blue jay keeps dive bombing me when I go out for my walk? What is it trying to tell me?
I'm laughing because we definitely have a few vocal blue jays or scrub jays that yell at us when we're doing things that it doesn't like in the yard. But
Oh, yes.
we actually, in our animal Reiki classes, we use, as a part of the way to practice Reiki, we actually use the eagle cams that you were talking about, and other bird cams as well on explore.org to do some practice. And it's really fun. We always, part of the teaching of animal Reiki is that, of course, you always get permission. So, we have the permission from the parents, we have permission from the babies, and we'll start when they're in the egg, and then just little hatchlings, and then because we have a class every other month to every month. And so then, throughout the year, we'll continue to work on them, and then they'll leave the nest, and then the next year we'll have the new ones come in, and so it's really an interesting and such a connected and beautiful way that we love to connect in with the birds and practice, and also give them Reiki, and
I think that's absolutely wonderful, because even if somebody lives near the woods, it doesn't mean they're going to see an eagle's nest. So that's a way of seeing birds that you wouldn't otherwise see, not very often anyway.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're lucky and we have a bird's nest in our tree nearby, or a porch. One summer I had phoebes nesting, and we could watch them the whole summer long, even a second brood. But that doesn't happen too often.
Yeah, it's so true. We have the migratory ones that come through here, and every year, the swallows and the robins, and I have a woodpecker that comes through, and the chickadees. I don't know if they're migratory, but I know the other ones are, because we'll see them, only certain times of year. And as I said before, Colleen and I have had really significant encounters, like you were talking about, with the different birds, hawks. I know owl. Colleen's had significant experiences with an owl, and then it's funny because you do feel connected to when certain ones come in, that they are providing message. I know I was going to ask you about what the deck, what hawk is in the deck. I mean, I know what the meaning is for me, but I'm curious too, is what the deck says about, like you said, it's messenger. And so I'd be curious as what your deck says about hawk as well, and the picture too.
Yes, I have a couple of hawks in my deck.
Oh, okay.
And because the message is different, and the broad-winged hawk is one that, at the point where I was still trying to write the deck, and I was having these odd encounters with hawks, there was a broad-winged hawk where I go in the summertime. Beautiful. And there was a tall dead tree, and it would squawk at me. It's not a big hawk, it's a small hawk, but they're very territorial. And every time I went out the back door, it would squawk at me. And it was as if it was mad at me. It really, one time I went out and I was walking around, it's a cottage area, and I had a sandwich in my hand, and I looked up, and this hawk is in the tree, and it's got a dead mouse in its beak hanging from its mouth. And I thought, can't I even eat my lunch in peace without you showing me what you've got in your beak? And so the broad-winged hawk says, act boldly on your intuition. It lives in forests, and it swoops down quickly, catching prey by surprise. Follow your inner guidance without hesitation, even if it takes you to unexpected places. And I think for me, I'd been hesitating about this. Who am I? The kind of insecurity many of us go through. Who am I to write a deck of meditation cards? What do I know about birds, really? And then I thought, okay, I've really got to do it. So that's where that talk story came from. And the other hawk in my deck is a red-tailed hawk, a large hawk, which are fairly common around here and in other places in North America, I think.
Beautiful.
So that went into the sixth chakra. It says provide spiritual guidance. And I think for me, the hawk is about seeing the big picture and seeing the detail at the same time. Really good for people who are teachers of spiritual teachers, because we need to see the big picture. We need to understand what people are going through. We need to see the world picture. But we also have that need to get ourselves organized, to list our classes, to get them, to hold them, to actually produce something to help people. So it says the large and powerful red-tailed hawk, having excellent vision, can view the whole picture. The hawk knows what details are important, so it can pick things out, sees everything, but it picks out what's important. As a leader, you can use information and power for the highest good. Demonstrate your discernment and judgment. So this is really a message to spiritual leaders, because there's so much that is available to them to know what to choose. What, even in a class, when do I teach this bit? Do I let this bit go on for an extra hour because it's really important right now? Or do I bring everybody back to this detail? So it's a lot about using your judgment and your power. And that sometimes I think cards come to us as a confirmation. Yes, you're doing the right thing. People will say, oh, that's just how I'm behaving now. And I say, that's wonderful. The cards are giving you a confirmation. And other times the cards will come as a bit of a shock. And I had one client one time, and I've always been very careful just to have my one deck of cards. And I offered this man a card before a Reiki session. He said, oh, I don't like that one. I said, that's fine. You don't have to like all the cards or the bird. And we had the session, and he said, can I draw another card? And I said, sure. So he drew another one. Well, it happened somehow an extra card had got into my deck, and he drew the same card.
Oh.
So I said, I think maybe you better listen to this message, even if you're not really keen. I think maybe you better pay a little bit of attention to this, because I think spirit comes in many different ways.
Definitely have had that happen. I don't like that card. Pull it again.
Yeah,
three
exactly.
times. Pull it 3 times. Like, all right, fine. I also, Catherine, with the hawk, it was a hawk for me that confirmed my decision to quit my corporate job and go into being a whole roundabout story of basically being a spiritual teacher and what I do now. Yeah.
So again, seeing the big picture and seeing the details of what you needed to do in that moment.
Yeah.
For me, hawk has always been a big part of my spiritual practices and awareness. And I just know that when I see them, it's a heads up, there's a message, and a message through me. It's for me, to me, through me, however it's going to come through, but there's always the heads up with it.
So
and
true.
Even though we have a lot of red-tailed hawks here in this area, that's a common hawk. And that I would say, similarly to you, I had a period of time where I had hawks, owls, birds that would die and be in my path, sometimes for me to take them and put their bodies somewhere else safely, that they can go back to the earth and the way they're meant to. And then it's true that I haven't been in that experience now for really a lot of years, actually, that hasn't been happening so much. But the birds themselves are still the messengers.
Yes, excellent. And I think it was Ted Andrews who said, birds may come to die in our place because they feel it's a safe spot. And one time I had a small songbird that came in it hit the window, unfortunately, and was on the ground. And I went over, I gave it a little bit of Reiki, gave it a little bit of water, a few drops, and it rose up as if it was making one last attempt. It was on the grass at that point in an open area. It rose up, it flew underneath some rose bushes, just really tucked in, and it died there. And I thought, oh, it just got enough energy to go to where it wanted to pass. And I buried it there. I thought, this is where it wants to be. And it made me feel good, actually. I thought the bird's time had come, and it shows where to be when its time had come.
I feel that way. I mean, there's been many times I've pulled over on the side of the road to help a bird that has been stunned, by either running into the car or something. And Reiki does make a difference. And even if it is just to put them where they're safe and where they can collect themselves and be in a place that is safe for them and comforting to them.
Yes. And even if it's passed on, I always send it Reiki when I pass roadkill.
Me too.
And people do things with birds. There's on a road where I go in the summertime. There's a small Indigenous man who has a little jewelry shop, and I love to stop there. And we had a long chat one day, and he said, "Do you know what my nickname is?" And I said, "No." And he said, "It's roadkill." And I thought, oh, okay. And he said, "People bring me birds and animals that had passed by the road, and I turn them into wonderful healing tools, into jewelry and into necklaces and into smudging wands." And I thought, how beautiful is that? That something, people were bringing him things so that he could turn them and transform them into something healing and beautiful. So although the name seemed very odd to me, I loved his story.
Well, probably had a completely different meaning for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I actually have a very dear shamanic family. And so that is also true in our community and with the Indigenous people in our community, that we share these things so that they can they can have that transformative gift that I believe they also offer and provide.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I think some times too, when we go for a walk, the meditative walk, we can just notice things more closely. Sometimes when we go for a walk, we're very busy. We're just trying to get someplace. But if we go for a meditative walk or a joy walk, as I like to call it, then it's a way of looking for joy around us, even on a cold day or on a too hot day. It's a way of finding something in nature. And it's wonderful if you can bring a child with you, because they see the joy immediately that we don't see right away sometimes. And they can point us in the right direction, and they're so close to nature and they know what to look at.
That's Robin's daughter is 7. And she and I went for a walk in the neighborhood, and we probably walked a total of maybe a mile and a half. She cartwheeled the entire mile and a half. She's 7, and just one after another, after another, after another. And I thought, well, there is just childhood wonder at its finest.
Absolutely. And they get us to do things. I was with my grandson, and we rolled down a hill, and I thought, wow, it's been a really long time since I actually lay down on the ground and rolled down a hill. And as an adult, it's kind of scary. You can't.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I was like, oh,
a bit quickly. But it was fun. It brings us back, and you lie and you look at the clouds, and you see the insects and the butterflies and the flowers, and it just fills your heart with joy. And if you don't have a child, you can try and put yourself in the state. If I were a child, what would I notice? Oh, yes, the icicles on the branches are just so beautiful. They're like crystal treasures on the branches. We could put ourselves into that mindset, I think, if we want to. And sometimes it's an effort, and then it becomes easy because it's part of us.
Well, and I think for me, that's one of the things that Reiki does for me is it shifts my mind in a moment. And I do a lot of Reiki on the fly, like you say, kind of walking meditation and just simply activate Reiki. And one of the things that we teach again in animal Reiki is really like expanding your perceptions in front of you, behind you, on each side, above you, below you, and within you. And it does exactly what you were just saying, Catherine, is that waking up the noticing and the kind of your ears hear, your eyes see. And the other thing is, like, even speaking of children, I was with Robin's daughter again one day in her bedroom, and all of a sudden she heard the birds making a lot of noise. And it was interesting. She just opened the door. She ran right out. What is going on in the backyard? And possibly it's the cat has a bird. So very heightened awareness of bird language and what they were saying in that moment. And
Yes.
she was completely involved in something else, heard the birds and an immediate reaction. And I thought, boy, that's just
So
what's that, Robin?
she's learned that one. And because I've taught her, because the cat gets the birds, which really, is hard, very hard on me. That if I hear them yelling, if I hear the birds yelling, it's possible, and maybe I can make the cat get rid of the bird, scare the cat enough that she'll drop the bird. So anytime we hear the birds, go outside. And it's a lot of times it's not about the cat. They have other things, but yeah, it's like, what are the birds saying? Go outside.
Well, they see animals and birds in different ways too, and I think sometimes they take them very much for granted. It's just part of their world. I remember we had bunnies. Sometimes we have rabbits that come into the yard, and there was a whole family of bunnies in the spring, and I was quite excited to see the little ones. And my grandson just took it for granted. Like, of course there will be bunnies in the yard. Why wouldn't there be baby rabbits all around? And that's fun too. Just that is assuming that this is part of our world instead of making it really unusual.
So
It's
true.
just part of them. Like looking in here in Quebec, we get very excited when the Canada geese come back in the spring because it's getting warmer. Spring is coming. There is hope. And when they leave in the fall, and I still run outside like I did when I was little to see the geese fly overhead. And I was pointing them out to my granddaughter. She said, "They're the Canada geese. The spring's coming." I said, "See, they always fly in a V formation." And she looked up at me and she said, "Yes, and sometimes they fly in W." But, well, that's true because they change formation. And I wrote one of my cards about that was perhaps thanks to my granddaughter, Madeleine, about how the very first, the Canada goose is the very first card. A little bit because I'm Canadian, because they're first chakra bird, maybe a little bit about Madeleine. And it says each Canada goose flying in V formation has a clear line of sight and maintains contact with the others. Watch out for your community and look for ways to help. Listen with your heart and tell the stories that can give direction. And when we see those geese flying in a V formation, we often watch, and one that is not the leader will move up and take the lead position. And then they do seem to fly in W's when they get into double formations. And I thought that was very observant, and that we need to think about seeding our role as leaders sometimes, and as spiritual teachers. Sometimes it's important. I always say that the students are my teachers.
Oh yeah.
I learned so much from my students, and every time I hold a Reiki class, I learn something new because
Every
each
time
brings something to the class. And so a little bit like the Canada goose, we seed our role as leaders sometimes. And it's important to be able to do that because otherwise you can't keep going any more than the Canada goose can keep flying at the head of the V all the time.
That is such a great imagery. And same here, we have the geese fly back and forth from here too. And the same thing,
Yes.
you can hear them, and it definitely makes me go outside to watch the geese
Yes.
or look up wherever I am.
There's something primordial in that. I think the celebration of springtime and the understanding of the autumn, change of seasons.
This is good because I've been wanting to ask about the season cards, Catherine,
Oh,
as
yes.
well, you mentioned, because Colleen and I also really celebrate the seasons, like the physical seasons, but then also kind of the seasons of life. We're in big seasonal changes astrologically right now as we're recording this. And so, yeah, if you can kind of speak a little bit about the season cards and then also how you use those in combination with the bird cards that you had kind of talked about.
Good idea. Thank you for asking that. I don't always think to mention the seasonal cards. When I was early doing my first version, I thought I had finished. I had 49 cards. And I happened to be speaking with a woman who I had a great deal of respect for, who was a psychic. And I don't know what other spiritual modalities she used, but I know she was psychic. And she had a very business background too. So we clicked. And she said, Catherine, you're not done. And I said, what do you mean? I thought, like, I'd done all this work. I thought I was finished. She said, no. There's supposed to be 54 cards in your deck. She said, they're telling me 54 cards. And it was very businesslike, like matter of fact, 54 cards. Come on, you're not done. And I thought, oh no, I don't know what else to write. I'm out of inspiration. And then it came to me when I asked for guidance. What am I supposed to do? A card for each season. So I thought, okay. I wrote a longer card for each season, and I asked Heather Bale, the artist, to write to paint a card representing the season. And these are actually paintings that are local to my area. I could recognize the settings for them, but they're also generic. And I think, and each seasonal card has a small bird in it, like the winter card has a little cardinal amongst the icy branches. I'll show you that one because you can see it. So there's the card of winter with the red cardinal. And the note is a little bit longer. And then to finish the story because you realize there was a missing card, I had 49, I added 4 seasons, I had 53. And I thought, now what? Well, I went out for a drive in the country, and the short story is that I came across a snowy owl. And the snowy owl is the emblem of my deck. This is the box. So the Bird Vibes meditation deck, and the snowy owl, I saw, it flew right over my car, and I was sitting in the car. I'd stopped the car. I'd driven past something that looked white in the tree several times, and I couldn't figure it out. So I stopped the car on the side of the country road, and then this white thing came away from the tree, flew over my car. It has a wingspan of 4 to 5 feet. So the thing is huge, right? And I'm sitting in my car. I automatically ducked my head because it was so close to the car and it felt so powerful. And it flew over my car, and then it flew along a gully looking for mice or rodents, whatever it was hunting for then. And it came to me that that was the last card in the deck, and that I was meant to include the 8th chakra, and that while I had 7 cards for each of the first 7 chakras, there was meant to be an 8th chakra, which I worked with. I like to work with 8 chakras. And so there was to be 1 card for the 8th chakra. So that made my 54 cards. And I thought, oh, she was right. She told me Raphael wants 54 cards in your deck. And I thought, okay. And there were my 54 cards. So that's how that came about. Now, in terms of the use, Robin, you asked about how we use the seasonal cards. When I'm doing this with a class or a group, or even on an individual level, I often tell people to, if they pick a season card, to pick a bird card as well. And that the seasonal card is like an amplifier. It will give more information. It might even be something relating to timing, that they might want to reflect upon the message from the bird. And does this affect me now in the season that I'm in? Or is it going to perhaps affect me in the fall or in the spring? And maybe it's going to affect me in the fall. So that's one way of using it. I've seen some very strange things with the cards in how they're selected. And I remember one time a friend of mine and my colleague Julie and I used to take groups to Sedona on spiritual retreats. And it was one of the most striking uses of my early version of the cards. There were, I think, 12 people in the group, and each person standing around in a circle chose a card. The cards came out. They had, of course, been shuffled and were chosen randomly, but the cards were picked as we went around the circle in the order of the chakras, and all of the seasonal cards came out. So there were seven cards for the chakras that were picked, and the 4 seasonal cards came out within one group. And we thought that was pretty amazing. So the cards have their own way of being used, whatever I might logically tell you as a use. They just make themselves known when they're meant to come out. And the message for each season is a little bit longer and more spiritual.
Okay. Well, and for me, the seasons they often translate to medicine wheel and life cycles.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
So would you say the messages kind of run in that life cycles type of a?
Yes, and I think I've often visited Florida in the November when it's not very nice here, and it's kind of gloomy and dark in Quebec where I live in November, and we've often gone to visit Florida, and I've learned that even where I wouldn't think there are seasons, there are seasons.
Yes.
So they're very obvious where I live and probably where you live, but there are also 4 seasons in many other places that people wouldn't think of there being seasons. So it might be that someone living in Florida would pick a winter card and it wouldn't look like their winter, but there's still a winter. There's still a colder season and a warmer season and a rainy season and a hurricane season. And we adjust the cards to our own environment.
Yes. Well, and you also say you teach Reiki classes, and what about your chakra classes? Are you teaching those now? What's going on in the rest of your world?
Well, I'm a busy woman, as many of us are, and I've had to focus a little bit. The last year has been focused on producing with Beyond Words Publishing this deck, and I've been writing more articles about chakras and health and Reiki, birds, yoga. Even I wrote a recent article about how the cards came to me and the birds came to me during yoga practice in various places. So I've had fun writing. That being said, I'm getting back to Reiki this year as I'm freed up more from my production of the deck with Beyond Words, and I focus my Reiki work more on the higher levels. I'm interested at the stage of life that I am at, and in having some free time for myself as well. So
that part.
Yes, I try anyway. My husband might not say the same thing, but we all try to balance our lives. And in my effort to balance, I'm focusing more on the higher levels of Reiki, and I have a Reiki master program, and that is an intensive 6-month program where people really focus on the discipline of Reiki and how to bring Reiki into their life every day. So I do have some students in a Reiki master, and I teach some classes as they arise, but I don't plan them ahead of time. I let spirit guide me. When someone asks me for classes, or I have enough people for a class, then I'll set out a date and I send out an email. And if anyone would like to hear more about that, then they can certainly sign up for my email on my website. So they could go to catherinecbastedo.com, sign up to receive my emails, and they will receive information about when I'm giving classes. The other thing that I do is hold retreats, and I like to hold retreats in the summertime. I do at least one every summer, and I'll be doing one again this year. And I hold those retreats in northern, loosely termed northern Ontario, not too far, not north, but a couple of hours north of Toronto, in what we call cottage country, on an island in a very old cottage that was built in 1906 and is built on bedrock, Canadian Shield bedrock running with quartz and amethyst running underneath. It has amazing energy. I hold my retreats there. It's being on an island. We're surrounded by the beautiful energy of the water. I often teach a Reiki class during my retreat, but I also allow people to rejuvenate, to have some what I call dock time. We do yoga on the dock, relax, swim, canoe, hike, beautiful hike on the Canadian Shield. I do some meditations on the rocks. It feels quite isolated, and I love doing these. I love bringing people to this place and having them feel the energy of the land. This was sacred land for many, many generations. I know I found prehistoric tools on the land. So I know this was a stopping place on trading routes for Indigenous people.
Wow, that sounds really beautiful.
Anyone is welcome to come from it's accessible, and again, it's on my website, and if you'd like more information, you can always receive my emails. But I'll be gearing up for a summer retreat soon. I'm start thinking about this in February as the days get longer and brighter, and I start thinking, oh, summertime retreats.
It
Fun.
will happen.
Yes, relaxation.
Things do turn.
Mm-hmm. So all in all, I focus on classes, on Reiki, my Reiki Master program, doing some writing, and I do like to travel. So I try and keep some time for that too, and learn new things and connect with people who are teaching new things in other places. I spent a couple of vacations in Brittany, and I am hoping to have a deck coming out that will be based in Brittany, France, of pictures of doors and what that leads to in terms of life thresholds. Brittany is a magical area with forests where King Arthur reputedly went, and Merlin, and stone circles, and it's quite a magical land.
And where is that?
In Brittany, France.
Oh.
Brittany's next to Normandy. It has stone circles there where there are 7,000 standing stones. Like imagine Stonehenge multiplied 500 times. All of those stones standing in one place.
And you just go there to visit. You're not holding tours or anything like that.
No, I decided that would just be too complicated these days. I did toy with the idea, but I thought, no, I meant to go there myself, learn, study, pick up the energy there. I did really feel the energy. I could feel it now as I talk about it. Actually, I have shivers going down my legs. So there's definitely energy there in the wonderful forests of Merlin and King Arthur and the stone circles. And the wonderful thing is that they're not really visited the way Stonehenge and the circles in other countries are. I've been there where I was the only one. And some of these stones were placed to look out across the sea. They were placed in strategic places for the seasons as well by the Druids, because they were the Celts who came from Ireland to Brittany. So this is all connected with the Celtish culture.
I can feel it as you're saying it.
Yes.
That is a place I now know I need to go.
Yes. Oh, it's a wonderful place. I must have thought we'd talk about it because I put on some Celtic earrings that I bought in Brittany for this show. I thought, what will I put? What earrings will I wear? And chakra earrings, or no, just get out the little silver, simple Celtic earrings that remind me of spiritual moments in other places.
Well, and for me also, the Celtic traditions and spirituality is, I would say, a very cellular memory.
Well, I see something that looks like a tree of life behind you.
Yes.
Yes, that looks very much about what I'm talking about, the tree of life energy. Of course, for the Druids, that was very strong. And some of my pictures will be in openings in the forest, and some of them will be doors that are centuries old that lead us into magical places.
Just a beautiful concept and idea. I can't wait to see what comes through and the messages that come through for that.
I have
So
so many projects.
will they be meditations or more oracle? Because it sure seems like they could be
I think
oracle.
perhaps, I'm not too sure.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I had started working on them before I produced my Bird Vibes meditation cards this year, and then I put them aside. And now I think I need to go back to them. And I think I was meant to take a hiatus from the cards and go back to them with a fresh eye and rethink a little bit. And perhaps, yes, perhaps they will be oracle cards. That might well be. You're very insightful, Colleen.
Yeah, listening to the energy of it. Yeah.
I picked up a Neolithic scraper when I was in Brittany too. I feel there's some connection there with ancient peoples that I have, that these things just come to me walking along a path. Actually, no, I won't look for it now. But it's a very beautiful quartz and pyrite scraper, probably thousands of years old, that would have been used as a tool by people to scrape furs. And it was on a spiritual path. Many of the churches in Europe are built on pagan sites, and there was an old chapel, and it was built on probably a pagan site. And the path went up to town, and I looked at my feet, and there was something bright and shiny. And like a blue jay, if it's bright and shiny, I'll look at it, pick it up, and I took it home and washed this stone. And then I thought, oh, I should put it back where I found it. But I'll wash it first. And when I washed it, it was this beautiful quartz scraper. And I thought, wow, I think that was really meant to come to me. So I think it felt it was okay to keep it. And it joined the one from my summertime. I think I must have been an archaeologist in an earlier life, or or perhaps as someone who lived in early times.
Well, the stones recognize you.
Yes, something like that. Yes.
They hear your footsteps coming.
Maybe.
Like, hey.
Yeah, she's here.
She's back.
Maybe there's some messages that I need to bring out around that.
It sounds like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it's often a choice that we have in life as to which projects we work on. What's most important, and that's, I think, when we need to tune in to do Reiki, and to tune into source and to our higher guidance, and say, what is important for me now? What is important for other people around me now? What am I meant to bring forth?
Those are
and what help do I need?
Yeah, what great questions. Can you say those again?
Maybe. They were pretty channeled. They were pretty channeled. I don't know.
What am I meant to focus on now? What am I meant to bring forth, and for myself and for other people? And what help do I need to do this? There was I think I called on a lot of help in my meditation cards. My sister's an amateur naturalist as well, and was a great help early on with the deck, and giving me comments and telling me to make things more accurate from the ornithological point of view. And she was absolutely right. So I'm very grateful to my sister. People helped me all along. My youngest daughter was in environmental studies and was a great help. In fact, she named the deck Bird Vibes. I had something avian something or other, and she said, "Oh, Mom, no, Bird Vibes." I thought, "Oh, that's catchy. I like that." And then through her, I met this ornithologist who reviewed the deck and pointed out differences between the male and the female where I hadn't noticed that, and the height that the birds were flying, the facts, and was very helpful that way. So I think we all need help when sometimes something can be quite daunting when there's a project ahead of us that we feel we're meant to do. But if we call in the help, we can get it done. and many of my Reiki friends read texts, and there's a wonderful yoga studio here led by someone who offered to read the section on the chakras in my Bird Vibes deck, because I wanted to make sure that everything was accurate and resonated. And we had quite a debate about how to portray the eighth chakra in terms of a color.
So what did you come up with?
Well, they said to me, what color is the eighth chakra? And I said, I see it as mother of pearl, iridescent. And I'm not sure how you're going to convey that on paper. And I asked my yoga teacher, and she asked her guru, and in Kundalini yoga, which is the kind of yoga I like to do, which is a very spiritual form of yoga, the eighth chakra is seen as white. Now, and I of course Googled and researched, and some traditions see it as pink, some as white, some as gold. And when I did Reiki, I was seeing it in this I would tell my clients, I see it as mother of pearl. So we came up with a kind of a creamy beige, which I think works quite well. And I could show it to you here.
Actually, Catherine, when you move kind of to the side, the way the light reflects on you, behind you on your wall, when you said mother of pearl, I've seen it kind of behind you and on the wall, and even in your auric field. Then I realized, oh, it's like this combination of the way the light. So it's like when you move towards your lamp, this, when I'm seeing you, I think it's too fun. You can see it. Mother of pearl is behind you.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. So go ahead and show your book anyway. Sorry.
Oh, it's like a seashell, the way I really see it, like peach and pink and gold and in French we say nacré. It's a very nice word. It says mother of pearl all in one word, nacré, because nacre I think is the seashell. So in the book, yes, we settled on a color that is a creamy color. I think it conveys it quite well. And I do think I say it in the guidebook that that people see it in different traditions, but see it as this mother of pearl color. And sometimes when I'm doing Reiki, I see it in my client, as you just did, that when it comes in as that beautiful light. So,
wow. Well, Catherine, this has just been really fun, and like just learning so much more about it all has really been expansive, and really beautiful. And I know so many people will connect with birds. I'm thinking of like multiple people I can gift this deck to that are so connected in, and really amazing. And as I said, with Colleen and I, we've had really significant time frames in our life where the birds have really, I mean, it's every day, but it's really those significant moments where you can remember moments. Yeah, those moments where it's guided our lives or confirmed things, that discernment that you were talking about. So let's go ahead and say one more time, you can get your meditation deck. It's called Bird Vibes, and you can get it on all major bookstores online. You can find different bookstores on your website, which is catherineCbastedo.com. And that is Bastedo. You can always click on it in our description. So if you can't remember how to spell it, that's okay. And then what is the publisher again? I know it's
Beyond Words Publishing.
Really well publisher.
Out of Portland.
Yeah, many people will know that.
Yes. And if anyone, when they have the cards in their hand and are using them, would like to send me an email with questions about the birds or the meanings, I'm happy to answer. People often send me their special spiritual bird stories, and I'm happy to respond. I'd like to say this time I've spent with you both, Robin and Colleen, has been delightful. It's been a period of joy, fun to talk about the cards and share experiences, and you've given me some really good insights too. So I thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you so much. What just a a beautiful expression and beautiful messages. And thank you for listening. And then, like you say, manifesting,
Very
receiving the
welcome.
resources that you need to manifest.
From my heart to yours.
Yeah, thank you. And for everyone listening, of course, with Robin and I, you can find us at reikilifestyle.com. All right. Oh, and we should mention we always have our Tuesday morning Reiki share. I don't think we did mention that, but we have our free and open to all distance Reiki share that's online every Tuesday morning from 9:30 to 11 a.m. Pacific time, and go to reikilifestyle.com if you want to join us. All right. Well, thank you again. And thank you to all the listeners. Lots of blessings to all.
Thank you.
Blessings indeed.
Bye.
Bye.